I begin every show, I'd like to ask a favor from anyone listening to please like, share, subscribe, and follow wherever you're listening to us today. It really helps drive the message forward, and doing so could be something that changes someone else's life. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast under Guys Dealings with Feelings, and on YouTube and Instagram at ITU Thrive. That's the letter I, the number two, the letter U, and the word thrive. So we got a special guest today, and I'm so happy and grateful to have David Buck on today. He's the author of The Time Optimized Life. He has 35 plus years of organizational and time management experience. He is a retirement coach working with clients nearing retirement, and he also collaborates with financial advisors and human resource professionals to help their clients and employees prepare for life when they decide to leave their career. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
What an honor and a pleasure, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
Today we're gonna look at some time management things. Probably won't get into too much of the retirement part, but maybe a little if we're heading into that, some ways that people can kind of prepare. So, just to get us going, what are the most common time management challenges for people who are in their career? So they're in their jobs working and they're having some time management issues.
Well, and ironically, it cuts across it doesn't matter your age.
Yeah.
From my data, the top ones that come to mind first are distractions. And I define distractions as a internal disruption that you allow you to take yourself off of something you're being focused on. So a lot of times the biggest culprit of distractions are our cell phones or our smartphones.
Hmm.
And that is one of the main things I start to work with clients on is you got to figure out how to get control over that smartphone. It's a wonderful productivity tool on one hand, but it is an amazing distraction on the other. And so distractions is the first one. The second one is procrastination. And I define that as intentionally delaying on something that you know when you delay will harm you. And it's usually the number one culprit around distractions is they don't have what they need to find in front of them. So it's to like, I'm going to paint my bedroom. Well, people will procrastinate instead of breaking it down into what exactly do I need to do to paint my bedroom. And so it's typically not defined enough as to why people do that. So those are the two biggest distractions, probably of an assessment tool that I use. 90% of the people have one or both of those as their top choice.
Okay. All right. So distractions, which clearly we can help ourselves with, like you said, the phone is a life-sucking device. It's given us a lot of tools for sure, but man, it's hard. I did a reel recently on unplugging and just getting away from all that and the stimuli that comes with it. So, not only does it give you the some of the most precious resource we have, which is time, back, but it also helps you kind of unwind from all the immediate dopamine hits and stuff we get. So, what are the biggest issues that an average person has with managing their time, and what can they do to overcome that? So, maybe the two things you just described, other than the phone, what are some things they can do to overcome that stuff?
Yeah, I work with clients and I try to teach people change the term time management. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, The Time Optimized Life, because I like the word optimization versus management. Nothing wrong with management in the sense that it helps us power through something, but it tends to be reactive
Mm.
versus when you flip the script and say, how do I be more proactive with the use of my time? That usually requires you to then plan. Because when we're reactive, we have a tendency to do last in, first out. Email comes in, oh, I can answer that real quick. I got that done. And you do that enough times, and then the important thing that you had to work on for that day is then needs to be rescheduled to another day. So, really, foundationally for me is for people to think proactively. What can I do with a little planning ahead of time to carve out an understanding of how I'm going to use my time? So then that way I can negotiate better when someone comes my way and wants me to give them my time.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, routines probably help with that, and discipline, I think, is the last two answers you've given. Discipline are keys to both of those, and keys to, I think, success in life in general. And um, exercising that, and it's such a big deal because, like I said, it's our most precious asset is time. And we constantly are looking for how can I cut corners. We look into meal preps and things like that, and it's right in front of us. We're staring at a phone, or
Yes.
we're putting off something, or we haven't, like you say, you tackle too many things that are immediate that you can do right this second, and then you kick the can down the road, and that kind of lends itself to procrastination too, I think. So what about multitasking? How do you feel like that? I've always heard you can't multitask. You can only do one thing at a time. So where are you at on that?
Well, thank you, because I agree with you. I don't
Okay.
think you can do more than one thing. As a matter of fact, our brains are not wired to do that.
Right.
I will use this analogy. My favorite band, rock band, is Rush, and their lead singer came out with a book earlier this year, and it. I think musicians are the closest thing to multitasking because obviously for him, he's the lead singer, he's the bass player, he plays synthesizer, piano. So he does all of that. But was interesting as I was reading this book, he said, we do so good because we have so much repetition. It becomes ingrained. He says, I have found myself in the middle of singing and playing a song, and I'm thinking about, okay, the next song is the next song. And he says, I'm not even aware that I'm playing because we have invested so many hours in practice and time to get to that point that it becomes second nature. And so, even in that case, I don't consider him multitasking because he's been able to train his brain to do what he needs to do because it's so familiar with it. And so, I tell people if you think you can multitask, do this example: practice for hours and see if you can participate in a meeting and do email at the exact same time and be fully while your boss is doing the meeting, and see if you're able to be fully engaged in that, because I'm willing you're not ready to take that chance, and I can imagine whoever is the meeting facilitator would not be happy to have you try to do two things at one time. So to me, I say microtask. You can have multiple things open at the same time, but make sure you're investing 100% of yourself in that task that you're doing before you choose to switch to something else.
Okay, gotcha. So consciously focus on not trying to do multiple things, but focus on the one thing, get it done. Focus on the next thing, get it done. Yeah, I've
Yes.
often, and as parents, we think we are multitasking, but that's how, and I, I'm not going to get in necessarily to what happened to my son, but that it wasn't. Bad things can happen when we think that we're taking care of things. We're juggling, and we're not really multitasking because the brain is doing one thing at a time. And I like that analogy with the musicians because I think you're exactly right. That's a bunch of muscle memory.
Yeah.
Their muscles are doing it. Their brain is still doing what he's thinking about the other songs. That's what the brain's doing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's very interesting. Yeah. So we're in agreement on that. And I had heard that we just don't try it because all you're doing is messing one or the other up. You're not succeeding at either.
Correct. And another example that is if it's two like low level tasks activities. For example, I have been known to fold laundry while I listen to a podcast. The idea behind that is I'm getting done with my laundry, but I know that I'm still in and out of that podcast. It's more when something's said that gets my attention, I stop folding laundry. So your brain is automatically going to shift you to the thing that's most important while you try to do more things, more than one thing.
Sure, sure. And I like that example too, because we think we are kind of doing it with a podcast, but if we did it with a paper we had to read and report on, or a book we had to report on, or something for work, to your analogy before, we shouldn't do it because we're not taking all that information that's going into our ears in at all.
Right.
What are some of the steps one takes to understand how to time optimize their life when they're in career? So how can they optimize things going on while they're working?
And I think that is first identify what your shortcomings are. I would say to the first and foremost, to the majority of people listening right now, is get control over your smartphone. And now I know not everyone that's a challenge for, but for the vast majority of people, that's the case. And if that means you quarantine your phone when you're doing important things, or you silence your phone, or you proactively tell people I'm busy for the next few hours, the idea there is to get control over your smartphone. And then the second thing for me, we all have access to, if we're using email, every email exchange server has a calendar built function built into it. Whether we use Outlook, Apple, or Google, there is an Outlook and there's a task function associated with that. It's part of it. It's free. You don't have to spend more money on it. You don't have to sign up for a subscription. Dive in and invest the time to be 100% fully ready to use the benefits of that tool. How you schedule, how you block time, how you prioritize your tasks. When you understand just the basic calendar tool and the task tool that comes with it, I think you will solve the majority of any current time management challenges that you have, but it requires an investment of time.
Okay, so consciously figure out what you're doing with your time, and with the like you say, with the calendar function, when you put that down, you can really see I do have a lot of opening in my day, and maybe the light comes on about this damn phone is screwing me up. I do need to quarantine. I like that quarantine with the phone, and I think a lot of us, and I'm included in this, think that falsely, I would think that if there was an emergency and we didn't have it immediately by us, that something would, how long did we live with rotary phones and be out in the yard doing yard work? And if something happened, you checked the message when you got back. So,
and I think in most cases, we could probably count that on the number of fingers where that's the case. But that's also part of the preparation, if you want to, is that you can say to somebody up front, hey, if you if your kids are out doing something or your wife is doing something and it's important and you need to be notified, you can take steps to proactively say, okay, call me twice or text me twice if it's an issue. There's some code or system you can put in place where oh, wait, this is important. I should stop what I'm doing if you think that. But for most days of the week, we can let it slide.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And as I'm saying this, of course, I'm just thinking out loud, but as I'm saying this, I bet that's probably of a really good marketing scheme that's occurred that's gotten us thinking, because that link. So if we link it to like you say, with our children, we link emergency to our children to this device that then we'll stare at all the time, and then we can be sold a bunch of stuff. And never does the child call with an emergency. Anyway, it worked. All right. So on your book, man, I'd like to get into, I'm going to ask you a specific question now, but
Thanks.
Feel free to go into as much detail as you like, because I'd like to know more about it. So what makes your book, The Time Optimized Life, different, and how will it help people improve their use of time?
So as I mentioned before, so many people look at time management as a reactive process, and I want to flip that script and make it proactive. And I do that through an acronym called PEC or PEC, and that is simply preparation, execution, and control. And if any given situation you work on starting with preparation, that you prepare for the time that you're going to do, then when you move into execution, you validate your preparation and say, did I prepare well enough? And if you didn't, maybe you need to stop what you're doing, go back and prepare some more. But once from execution, then as you're executing, it seems to be going well. Then the third element is control. And that means, am I going to complete this task, activity, or project in the time frame that I've committed to? And if I'm not controlling it well, do I have to adapt how I'm executing or go back again to preparation and do more preparation? And so the three work in tandem continuously to ensure that you're constantly challenging yourself proactively to stay focused on what you need to do and drive through to get done with results you're satisfied with.
Great. I love that. A lot of that falls in line with You learn what you need to learn. So I need to change. I've got to make a change. My life is not going the direction I want. So I learn I need to change. I'm going to try changing this about my life, and I learn how I'm going to change it. Then I execute those changes, and then I look and see where I am. If I need to go back, lather, rinse, repeat. So I totally in on that philosophy. And then so we've talked about some of it in the calendar function, and setting our phone down as far as discipline goes, procrastination as far as discipline goes. Is there some other things that you feel like people could put in right away? I mean, I know that, building a routine, having it in your calendar, or chopping out blocks for meetings, or even your personal time or your R&R, all times blocked out, really, really give us a upper hand on knowing where our time is going. But, since we're losing so much time, and that's an excuse I think a lot of us use when we don't get things done. Well, I just didn't have time. Is there some other tools maybe we could tell people about?
Sure. I think that first and foremost, if you are a person, and all of these take an investment of time. So let me just start there. You can't just say, I'm going to use this tool and dive into it without understanding how you're going to use that tool. And so I coach clients, particularly if they're struggling with how to use their time, is to track their time. And that's counterintuitive because you're kind of going, I don't have enough time. And now you're asking me to track my time?
Sure.
Yes. And there's some great tools out there, free tools. Toggl is one, and Clockify is another. And I personally use Clockify. And it allows you to develop your own categories of time blocks and then track yourself against that. And you will see, if you're diligent and do it for 6 weeks, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you are diligent, you will be shocked how much time you actually don't allocate for. And I don't want to call waste, because
Right.
people might say, I didn't intend to do this, but I did something else. But first of all, you're going to say, what I intended to do is not what I did. And what I did, I could have done a lot better, because I could have reallocated time or spent time. So I would encourage, outside of the base calendar or task function, if you're struggling, find one of those, or there's dozens of others, time tracking tools, but invest that time. And I think you'll be surprised at the areas you can improve upon.
Yeah, so Toggl and Clockify are the two you named, and you're using Clockify, and that enables us to push a button and start something, and then push a button to stop it, and we're doing some reflection there too. Really looking at trying to take accountability and reflection, again, things I think that are global in our lives, not just with our time. And so, what about finances? Can we dip into that a little bit?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, great. So if we've got guys out here who, and let's just say they're struggling. So after a divorce, or after a trauma, something that happens when we go through a trauma, I know it sure happened to me, and I'm trying to get back on my feet financially all the way, but it's a really tough thing to do. I mean, you get the real wind knocked out of yourself with a divorce, with losing a child or a parent or a sibling. So how are some good ways, some good tools that somebody could implement who is having some financial struggles? But I know that's a very big and blanket statement, and I apologize for doing that to you.
Mhm.
But what are some tools some people could kind of implement, or some kind of cornerstones in your philosophies?
So I think, depending on your financial situation, so I'll start first with, let's say you've saved some financial, so you've got somewhat of a nest egg, you've had a change in your lifestyle, something's happened, and now you're trying, I don't know where this all fits in. I would encourage you, go seek professional financial help through a wealth manager or financial professional. They're there. They're going to tell you things that you haven't even thought about. But if you're not in that spot, you're like, gosh, I'm scraping week after week. What do I do? I think then the first thing you want to do is find somebody close to you that you trust, that you can say, I need an accountability partner. I need someone to help me through this financial challenge or drought that I'm in right now, to help me come out the other side. Because we all want and need someone who can be there for us outside of this. And that's tough because obviously finances, there's a lot tied to it. I know for me, I still have the idea of I need to be the provider for my family, even though my
Sure.
wife and I are older, the kids are grown, it's still ingrained in me. So, but find somebody you trust that can come alongside you and provide you with real world advice or help solidify where you're thinking you're going. And then the second thing to do is sit down and create what I call a lean budget. What is the very least that you need to do to meet your financial obligations? And I know there's a lot around that. I am not one who's a fan of carrying a lot of debt, but if you have debt, what do you have to do, first of all, to stabilize, to meet the minimum requirements of your debt? But what is the least thing you need to do to survive, even though you might have more than that? Because that lets you know right then and there, what can I do to save? And you might be at a point right now where the lean is where you're totally at. You have no other room to go, but that's fine. At least you understand then what behavior changes do I have to make in my life in order to be able to right the ship or to start to get into the black again.
Yeah, I love that. Again, and I hate to keep saying the same thing over and over, it parallels if we set a goal or realize what the real problem is, then we know what to work on and what to work towards. And so if we realize this is as lean as I can get and I'm already doing it, okay, well, you know that this ain't going to cut it. You need to make some changes to make some more money or to change what lean looks like so that you can get some backup in there. Having some, and that really helps everybody. You know, I know that people think that when financial problems are in the way that is the problem, and it's not the problem, but it does add headaches to other problems.
It does.
And yeah, for sure. And you know, in our society, for sure, when we don't have money, it can really, really make things tough in our lives and exacerbate a traumatic experience. So shifting gears again, I have balance is something I've learned a lot about. Balancing our time is what would like to discuss with you because you're time kind of expert. Work-life balance. So as men, you touched on it a little bit, but as men, we are the providers. We're the care. You know, we're the ones who go out and make the money, and whatever that looks like. So, you know, to get our kids involved in the sports, housing prices are astronomical, I believe, across the country. Interest rates are up. Apartments cost a lot of money. Rent is this and all and the other. So we're really just working and selling our time to just get by, and it's really tough for people. So where are you on work-life balance? I'm huge on it. I think there should be as big of a balance as possible. If anything's going to be out of balance, I think it should be more life, less work, because at the end, I don't know how many times we lay down on our deathbeds and say, God, wish I'd have gone in another 40 hours, you know?
Right. Exactly. If I had only gotten that report done.
Exactly. If I could have got that daggum report done in the 70s. So where are you on work-life balance? I know that you've had success in your life and career, and where are you in reflection? If you were to look back and talk to your younger self, something like that. I'm just looking for some advice for people, talking to someone like you who's spent so much time really understanding time. Where are you on that?
So I ask people to think of work-life balance more as a phrase of work-life flexibility. And the reason why is it's hard if you're thinking balance. How do I maintain a 50-50 work and life? And I know every day that I live, it's not necessarily in balance. There is either heavy emphasis on work, or last week went and visited my son, and that was all life. So what I try to tell people to do is understand that at certain times in your life, you're going to have to be more invested in work. It's just whether it's economic or the nature of your occupation. Then there are going to be other times in your life when you need to be involved in life. So the idea is to build relationship capital in both areas of your life. What I mean by that, at work, you got to do the best job that you possibly can, whether you're self employed or you're working for someone else, so that when the time comes and something happens in your personal life, you can say to the boss, hey, um, I really would love to take off the next 2 days early. My kids in a recital, and I really want to be there for that. So can I leave at 3? And then the flip side is on the family side, you say, hey, everybody, I got to work hard the next 2 weeks. We've got a deadline looming on a big project, and I really need to help the company out for this. Sorry, please forgive me, but I'm going to be focused on that. And that, when you're invested and you're doing the family part right, that doesn't mean you're not there at all. It means that you're there when you need to be, but they understand when you have to shift. And it's when you draw on the relationship capital in both parts of your life when needed, that's where the flexibility comes in.
Nice. So work-life balance on a macro level. So you're going to have to train, depending on where you are in the cycle of life, you're going to have to invest more in one or the other. So invest more during the working years of life and spend more time lifing at the end, I guess.
I would just clarify too, Aaron, is that I don't want people to sacrifice their personal life also. So if somebody's in their 20s or 30s and they're in the gist of their career, gosh, I want you to be able to secure and do those personal times. And early on when my kids were younger, I defaulted to work over the personal life. I've got great kids who are very forgiving and probably think I'm too hard on myself. But I definitely, if I'd look at my younger self, say, you could have not been involved in work. You could have said, guys, I'll see you in the morning. I'm going to go home and spend some quality time with my kids. And so, don't discount it because you're young, but also give your family a heads up that you may need to work more.
Sure, I got that, and I think it's a fine line you're talking about there to build that capital. So I want to be the best employee, manager, owner, whatever. So I see how I can do that as I'm going to stay that extra hour. I'm going to spend a little more time on that report. I'm going to spend a little more time in that meeting. But then, again, razor thin edge, you've got to build some capital at the house too. And, you've got
correct.
kids who are wondering when dad's going to come home, and all they know is they've got a roof over their head and they're eating every day. And other than that, they want, they want dad. So I get it. It's such a razor's edge for us to balance. And, we don't know how long we've got. So it is tough. And I didn't, that's a philosophical thing. And I just wanted to see where you were on it. I appreciate you sharing your insight on it. So finally, I've got a link that I'm going to put in the description of this episode that's going to allow listeners to take the exclusive time management analysis. They're going to receive a free summary assessment that will highlight areas of time opportunity in 5 different categories: planning, task management, focus, organization, and personal care. Can you explain what this is for the listeners and share any other information you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for sharing that. So the TMA, or the time management analysis, is the foundational tool that I use to work with clients, because each one of us has a unique approach to how we're going to use our time. And so just because what works well for me may not work well for you, Aaron, or anybody else. So the TMA helps me and the person who takes it identify in those 5 categories where they have the greatest opportunity to work. And so that's where I encourage people, if you're kind of like, man, I just seem like my entire use of time is just, I struggle with it. Well, identify that the assessment will help you identify really the top key area. And the good news I tell people, when you work on one area, so if you have trouble focusing, if you work on focus, you're going to find other areas get better as well. Organization. So you don't have to work on each one individually. Just start on one and a rising tide lifts all boats, you'll find the others will probably improve as well. And if you just once you take the assessment there, you can take a look at other elements on my site, other resources that I do. If you want to talk about, having a consultation with me, all that's, you'll find that through that link. And I just encourage you to do that. But regardless of whatever you do, just take the TMA and you get an idea of where you think you can start to focus or to work on to improve how you optimize your time.
Yeah, and tackling your issues. That's awesome. And also, so they can use that link, which are taken right to the test, but like all websites, they'll be able to jump around and see these other things. And your book as well, same thing there?
Book as well there too. Yeah, it's available wherever fine books are stored, sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. You find it pretty much if it's online someplace, they can buy it there as well.
Great. Yes, everybody check that out with David. David, thank you so much for being here with us today. And everybody, thank you so much for listening, giving us your time. We understand how valuable that is. And we hope we brought some value to you. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next show.